everyone, welcome back to my channel. I have always wanted to say that exactly that way before. Anyway, I have one long form video up on YouTube, and it is with the one and only Hank Green. He was amazing. He was so much fun to work with. It was a dream come true filming with him. I used to watch him in high school on Crash Course and stuff like that, but this channel is more about me bringing cool information to you. I'm happy to take suggestions for anything that you would be interested in seeing on this channel, but I thought that first we would start with just an introduction of who I am and how the heck I got to where I am today. So that's what this video is going to be about. Real quick, some things you can expect to find in this video is a little bit about my childhood, where my interest in sharks came from, a little bit about my experience in college, an aquarium internship, and some undergraduate research experience, a bit about my time at Friday Harbor Labs during a research experience for undergrad's internship, my time as a lab technician, and finally, how I ended up in the program that I'm currently in now. I know it's a lot to get through, and this video is going to be a little bit long, sorry, but I hope that you find it fun and useful and informative. So let's jump in. Okay, so many of you may know me as a shark scientist. I went to my best friend's wedding recently, and everyone there knew me as, oh, you're the shark girl. Yes, shark girl, that is me. But believe it or not, I grew up in the middle of landlocked states. I lived in Illinois until I was 10, and then I lived in Arizona until I moved away for graduate school. So everyone always asks me, well, how did you end up in marine science, and what specifically was it about sharks that drew you into this world of research? And so I guess today we're going to talk a little bit about that. So growing up, everyone in my entire family knew the entire time that I was always going to be someone that was going to work with animals growing up, whether it was going to be as a vet or a zookeeper or an aquarist or a researcher. We had no idea, but everyone was like, that little girl's gonna work with animals one day. The reason that everyone thought this is because my two older brothers and I would adventure all around in our suburban area just looking for animals to observe in nature. We would, catch bullfrogs and toads and stuff like that. We would catch crickets and we would shake them up to stun them and then put them on a spider web. Then once they woke up, the spider would sense that there was a cricket there and it would come out to try and get the cricket, and then we would capture the spider. I'm still afraid of spiders. That's probably not gonna go away anytime soon. I simply can't get close enough to them to bring them outside without bursting into tears. It is what it is. And I know you're about to ask me, oh, but Jada, you study sharks. Why are you afraid of spiders? Well, I don't have an explanation. Anyway, growing up as a kid, that's the kind of stuff that I did. I would go around looking at different animals, seeing how I could observe them in their natural habitat and things like that. After moving from Illinois to Arizona, I did the same thing, just with different species. Rather than spiders and toads, we would look for scorpions and snakes and that kind of thing. My favorite thing was watching the lizards in our backyard do push-ups against the wall. I thought they were so funny. Now, the interest in the ocean came, I think, after I had the time to explore all these different environments, in Illinois, looking at forests and lakes and rivers and things like that. And then we moved to Arizona, and now suddenly I'm looking at things in the middle of the desert. But I never really had the chance to look at the ocean and have the same chance to explore what's going on in the ocean. So I think curiosity got the best of me. I started to learn a lot more through TV shows, documentaries, books, that kind of stuff, the things that all kinds of kids love. Through that, I learned a lot more about the ocean and a lot about sharks. Now, growing up, I was terrified of sharks. I think the first time I visited the ocean, the beach, I was probably 12 or 13, something like that. And the first thought on my mind was, I'm terrified. There's gonna be a shark in the water and I'm gonna lose a leg or something. Obviously, that did not happen. Shark attacks, they happen, but they're incredibly rare. I was also definitely afraid of jellyfish. Ironic. But anyway, I was learning a lot about the ocean. I was learning a lot about sharks. And so the more I learned, the more questions I had. And eventually, the questions I got became so complex that maybe science didn't have answers for me anymore. So then I had to become the scientist to find the answers. I also started to learn how important sharks are to our ecosystems. So I always like to say that knowledge is one way to kind of dispel fear. That is something that I've personally experienced. Again, I was terrified of sharks as a kid, but I learned that sharks are so important to our ecosystems. They act as top predators, they act as mid-level predators, they can help regulate the population levels of animals at lower trophic levels, so the things that they eat. They're pretty good indicators of the ecosystem's health. If they start to disappear from an ecosystem that they were usually very present in, that's probably not a great sign. I think that ecosystem might be in trouble and you might need to look into some things. So in learning about sharks, I became super curious about them as well, and I wanted to know, the typical questions everyone wants to know. What are they eating? How many species are there? Where do they mate? Where do they give birth? Do they all give live birth? Do some of them lay eggs? If so, where are they laying their eggs? All this kind of stuff. Now, there are over 500 different species of sharks. We don't have answers to all those questions for most of those species. So I just became curious enough that I decided sharks are going to be the thing that I decide to research. I also recognize that many of their populations around the world are not doing too hot. And given that they're so important to the ecosystem, I wanted to try and figure out more about these animals before they start to disappear. So after making that decision that I'm gonna research sharks with little to no idea of how the heck I was gonna do it, I embarked on the next journey, which was college. Now you'd think that maybe I went to a university on a coastline, but no, I went to a university on a mountain surrounded by desert, which was Northern Arizona University. I decided to go to NAU because I got a scholarship, a GPA-based scholarship that made it so that I don't have ridiculous amounts of student loans. I really wanted to go to California, but out-of-state tuition was really expensive. I didn't want to take out all those loans. There's a lot of different elements of that. So I decided to go to NAU. NAU, believe it or not, does not have a marine science degree, but they do have a biology degree. A lot of their bio classes were very pre-med based, but I decided to go the more wildlife route, and I took mostly wildlife type classes. Some of my favorites were vertebrate zoology and mammalogy, and those were so much fun because I just got to sit in a room looking at all these different species of animals and having to identify what species it was. That is just my jam. I love that kind of stuff. I also took an ecology class where there was a 6-hour field-based lab. This lab was 1 credit for 6 hours, but it was so much fun. I got to go out and core a bunch of trees to learn more about how drought had affected the trees in that area in a project that my friends and I conducted. I did another project about herbivory on certain types of desert plants in a different region. And that's why the lab was 6 hours, is because we would take field trips, go out into the field, collect a whole bunch of data, and then we would come back. And the next week we'd analyze all of that data. And then we would write up a whole paper. And I know that sounds really lame, but I thought that it was so much fun and really cool. And that is why I'm a scientist. So in college, I was taking a bunch of classes, as much as I could on animals, wildlife, that kind of stuff. I took those classes so that I could learn more about wildlife, but also more about the scientific process. The scientific process is complicated and it's nice to get some practice in it. So taking all those classes was really helpful for me. Now, while I was in college, the years between my 2nd and 3rd year of college, I decided to be an intern at an aquarium. I applied, I got in, it was amazing. I was an aquarist intern, meaning that I worked with everything that had gills and also the sea turtles, but not the electric eel. They wouldn't let interns touch that, and I don't blame them for that. So for that summer, I was helping to prepare food for different exhibits. I was helping to clean different exhibits. I was helping with checkups on some of the animals and, letting the rest of the staff know if I noticed any issues with anything, helping with guest relations to a certain extent. One of the big things I learned there was a lot about how different animals of different species interact with each other. You have different tanks with a whole bunch of different species in them, and you can see how they interact with each other, which I thought was really interesting. But even more interesting was looking at how different animals of the same species act differently in the same environment. So almost like trying not to anthropomorphize too much, don't want to put too many human qualities on animals, but looking at their different personalities, so to speak. I was able to see that very well in my intern project where I was target training the guitarfish. These guys. Thank you, Casey Bros, for this beautiful work of art here. So in target training the guitarfish, basically what I had to do is make a target to be able to put in the water. Mine was just a giant red rectangle. Put it in the water and feed the guitarfish whenever they came near it. Eventually they start to associate that with food. Basically, target training just makes it easier for the aquarists to feed the animals so they don't have to chase them around the exhibit, and it makes it easier to train the animals to get used to the aquarists and the veterinarians touching them in case you need to do checkups and annual exams and stuff like that. In doing that project, I saw how Fender, Gibson, and Kramer, the 3 guitarfish at the aquarium, how they behaved differently. Fender was a superstar. She was a little shy at first, but then once she got the hang of it and recognized what this target was for, she would make a beeline for it the moment I put it in the water. Gibson was more like, yeah, I'll get over there when I feel like it. I'll be there in a minute. Kramer, she was very wary of it. She would come around, she knew that it was for feeding time, but she just wasn't a huge fan of it. She worked with it and she definitely got better, but at the beginning she was a little more skittish than the others, I guess. But just those 3 individuals showed such a diversity in personality, in the way they interacted with the other animals in the exhibit, in the way they interacted with the humans. And I just think that that is super interesting. And that can translate obviously then into the wild. But another thing I learned at the aquarium was my love for science communication. I had to do some talks, like in front of the paddlefish exhibit or the piranha exhibit or the shark exhibit, to teach people about the animals that were in that tank. So I'd get up in front of the shark tank and say something like, this is our largest exhibit here at the aquarium with over 40,000 gallons for our 21 different individual sharks of 4 different species. We have the sandbar, the sand tiger, the nurses, and the lemon sharks. Let me point each of them out to you. Now, let me tell you, the first one did not go smoothly. The first one, I was like, hello, I'm an aquarist intern. Let me tell you about our sharks. Here are the 4 species of sharks in this exhibit. This is our largest exhibit. Sharks shed teeth. Do you have questions? That was pretty much my first shark talk, which is why they paired me up with a senior aquarist to come in and say, hello, let me provide you with some more information before we get to questions. Was I embarrassed? Maybe a little bit, but I got a lot better pretty quickly. It made me realize how much I love providing cool science information to people, teaching people about different animals, and how much I love answering people's questions. So after I finished that aquarium internship, which was a blast and a half, I finished out my last year of college. Now, in that last year, I did 1 semester of undergraduate research. I basically went to someone's lab and said, hey, I know you work on fish. I like fish too. I would like to work on fish. Do you need any volunteers? Benefit of being a teacher's pet, I had gone to office hours often enough to where she already knew who I was. So when I asked if she needed volunteers, she was like, yeah, absolutely. We got a project for you. Here you go. Basically, I was doing point tracking analysis on elongate fish. No, not eels, elongate fish. This is what they look like. Basically just trying to understand, what does their body look like, what kind of movements do they do as they're trying to bury under the sediment. These are intertidal fish, so they're in like rocky habitats and they'll bury underneath rocks and cobbles and all kinds of stuff like that. And we wanted to know more about how exactly they're doing that. So that was my undergrad research project. I did not finish that project, I just contributed a small part to it. I thought that it was really awesome. Now, while I was volunteering in that lab, the professor let me know of a wonderful opportunity at Friday Harbor Labs in Washington State in the San Juan Islands. And she said, hey, this is like summer camp for biologists and you should apply because it's super fun and you would learn a lot. And I was like, amazing, I got it. So I applied and I got in. Oh my God. So summer of 2019, I head on over to Friday Harbor. I had never been to the Pacific Northwest. I was probably the farthest I had ever been from my parents before, on this random island. And you know what? My professor was right. It absolutely was like summer camp for biologists. I was working on a research project specifically about skate egg cases. Skates are similar to stingrays. They're a little bit different. Stingrays give live birth and skates lay eggs. But there's a whole bunch of different species of skates and all their egg cases look different. And so I was just kind of investigating, what about these little textures on the surface of these egg cases? What is that role play? But while I was out there doing all this research, I'm also meeting a whole bunch of other scientists. Networking is very important, and kind of just vibing on this island, hanging out. You know, this was my first time spending extended periods of time near the ocean. So as just a desert girl hanging out near the ocean, I was like, I'm thrilled to be here. I'm excited. I'm just excited to be interacting with fish. I was going on trawls. I was seeing whales. I saw a pod of orcas with a baby. Like, it was truly the coolest experience ever. So I had a great time over there. I learned a lot. I learned how to use a scanning electron microscope, which was something that I had never even heard of before, but it let me look at these egg cases super, super close up. So I could see all these textures and get some more information about the textures on those egg cases. Wowza, that thing was so cool. A little bit terrifying, but very cool. And while I was there, someone approached me, Dr. Stacy Farina, and said, hello, I work at Howard University, which is an HBCU in Washington, D.C. So she comes up to me and she says, I need a lab technician for my fish lab in D.C. Would you be interested? And I said, yes, ma'am, absolutely. Please bring me out to DC so I can learn more about fish in any way I can. So my role in this lab as a lab technician was a lot of different things. You know, organize the chemicals, keep the lab organized, dissections on different animals, help some of the students in the lab with their projects, all that kind of stuff. One of the things I did while I was in this lab was they sent me back to Friday Harbor in the winter so I could CT scan some fish. Now, I put all these fish in a tube, and you put them in a CT scanner and it scans them, and now you have basically a 3D rendering of this fish. Then I learned how to take those 3D renderings of the fish and isolate a specific part of that 3D rendering, maybe a specific bone. So I used different softwares to isolate something that I had scanned. Then I was in charge of setting up the new Formlabs 3D printer that we got, which was awesome. We love a resin printer. And so I then got to go through the whole process of CT scan, isolate from the CT scan, now print the thing that I just isolated from the scan that I did. So now I'm holding a 3D print of a bone of a fish that I scanned. That was so cool. I also was in the process of clear and staining some sharks, some fetal sharks. Basically what this means is you clear away the muscle tissue, make it clear so that you can see through it, and then you stain the bone and the cartilage and the calcified cartilage so you can see the skeletal structure of the fish. It was super cool. I was very excited about it. So I dyed all these sharks blue. I went home for my brother's wedding, which was in spring break. The wedding was March 15th of 2020, and the next day everything shut down and I never got to finish clear and staining those sharks. So unless they have finished the process, there are tiny sharks stained blue somewhere in a lab. Mind you, these are dead sharks. They're not, you don't do these things to living animals at all. These are preserved specimens from a while back. So there are just preserved blue sharks somewhere. Now, after my time in DC, I went back to Friday Harbor again to do a little bit more research on some of that skate egg case stuff. That was also a great summer, but it was the summer of 2020, so it was pretty chaotic. But here's the really cool thing, is summer of 2020 is when me, Amani Weber-Schultz, Jasmine Graham, and Carly Jackson Bohannon founded and launched Minorities in Shark Sciences. So now I am a college graduate and suddenly a nonprofit co-founder. Did any of us have business experience? No, but we've figured it out and we're doing fine. So we had our initial mission in mind of we wanted to provide an opportunity to have these weekend workshops where our members could come out and tag sharks with us, get their foot in the door and get some experience in shark science. And then from there, everything just kind of exploded, and now we have so many different opportunities. We have tons of different members in many different countries around the world, and it is simply bigger than I ever could have imagined, and I'm thrilled about it. So just quick shout out to Minorities in Shark Sciences, aka MISS, and all of the people, all of our amazing members, the other co-founders, all of the people that have put in so much work and effort to create the amazing organization that we currently have. And shout out to everyone that's part of the community. Love you all. But anyway, again, this was summer 2020, and I was starting grad school in fall 2020. How did I find my advisor? I'm so glad you asked. So, my boss, Dr. Stacy Farina at Howard, someone reached out to her asking about me and if I wanted to go to grad school. Our research interests didn't really align, so he pointed me in the direction of someone else. I reached out to him. He said, yo, I'm in the field. Just apply to the University of Washington and put me down as your advisor. We'll have a conversation after I get back from the field. Applications will have already been due, so just apply. And I was like, great, amazing. So we had an interview. I went to Prospective Student Weekend. He accepted me as a student, and I was officially a graduate student in fall of 2020. Now, I moved to Seattle. This was my first time living alone. I was with no one. I didn't have roommates. It was just me during COVID. Nothing was in person. Everything was online. My cohort did a great job of, staying connected and everything, which was amazing. So grateful that I had that community. But then my advisor goes, hey, so I'm leaving and going to Woods Hole in Massachusetts. Again, I'm in Seattle at the time. He goes, you coming with me? I was like, to Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution? Yes, sir. Yes, I will be coming with you. So I applied at Hui and I got in, and now I'm a student in the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution Joint Program for Biological Oceanography, also known as the MIT Hui JP for BO, which is still a mouthful, but it's a lot better than the first thing I said. Now I've been in grad school for a total of 5 years, including the year that I did at the University of Washington, and I'm working on some really cool research with basking sharks and whale sharks, looking at their resource use and their habitat use out here in the Northwest Atlantic. And that's where I am. I'm still trucking along on my research. Clearly, I've just started a YouTube channel. Was that the smart thing to do? Maybe, maybe not, but I wanted to do it, so I did it anyway. I hope that this taught you a bunch about me and the paths that I took through science to get to where I am. Everyone's path through science is different, and that's okay. We need different experiences so we can have different voices and different thoughts. I always say, especially in relation to this, we need diversity in people because that creates diversity in thought, which creates innovation, and science needs innovation to succeed. So, in my humble opinion, it shouldn't matter who you are or where you come from. If you want to go into science, you just got to find the right path that's going to work for you to get there. Maybe it's similar to mine, maybe it's different, and that's okay. Anyway, we'll see how long this video is. Yeah. I hope this video gave you the chance to learn a little bit more about me, an introduction into the kind of stuff that I do. I research sharks, but I'm super interested in wildlife of all types, whether they be elephants, my favorite animal, or bony fish, or salamanders, or worms, as long as they're not polychaete worms, because I don't like those. Now again, I'm new to this, to YouTube. Hi, welcome. So yeah, just let me know what you would like to see on here, and I'll see what I can do to accommodate that. I've got a couple of ideas, but I'm not really sure what this channel is going to look like yet, so any ideas you might have or any suggestions you might have for what you might want to see me talk about would be awesome. Thanks so much for joining me today, and hope to see you back here again soon. And have a great day. Stay sharky, my friends.